Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see you again. It seems like it's been a long time. Greetings. So, I'm thinking about this time of year and the season that we are in right now. And it's sort of this in between season, yet so much is happening. So, for me, growing up in Minnesota, this was planting season. Now, here in Sarasota, we just got the rain, so we're entering our rainy season. And I realize for some of you, you might be in field trip season or graduation season. So I'm wondering if in the chat, if you have a season to share with us that you're experiencing right now, please do so. What season is it for you? It is spring. Field day. Yes, planting. Yes. Rose season, end of school. Fresh produce. Now is the time. I like that one. Rainy season in Florida, yes. Travel season. Summer vacation. I know that for us as children, as soon as we finished school, it was summer. It didn't matter if it was the end of June, it was summer. As soon as school ended, we're in the summer season. Thank you for sharing. Spring cleaning. Yes, wonderful. Well, I'd like to give you an overview of what to expect today. So we'll start with our announcements and introductions to our presenters, the calendar of the soul. I'll introduce our second meditative exercise. You will have pastel drawing with Nikki Shoneman, and David Barham will lead us in the topic of working within a community. A little past the first hour, we will take a break. David will continue with his presentation and read the calendar of the soul, and we will close 2 hours from now. So I just have a couple really quick announcements. Oh, Nikki wants to share that she will be starting with form drawing today. My announcements are that be sure to have your camera on 80% of the time to receive attendance credit. And be sure that you have your first and last name in your little box. If you are having a hard time with that, you can just chat your name to me and I'll make sure that it gets recorded in our roster. All right, so I'd like to introduce my friends and colleagues. So I'll start with Nikki. There's so many things that I could say about Nikki. I just want to share that if Nikki believes that something is right, good, and true, she will just do it. She is all in, and all the details seem to just work out afterwards. She is an amazing person. She teaches fine arts at Antioch and with Building Bridges, and she happens to be my team partner for the Building Bridges classes. Um, she assists in the Kairos program. She also runs a forest school and teaches art to young people in North Carolina. She is involved in the emergency pedagogy outreach program. And she just came back from Paris where she chaperoned a group of teenagers. So shout out to Nikki. That's great, Nikki. And the second person I'd like to introduce is David Barham. David is the director of the Waldorf Teacher Education Program at the Center for Anthroposophy. He is also the executive director of all of Center for Anthroposophy. I know him from High Moines. He was my daughter's teacher there. 18 years ago. So he's been around a while. Yep, it's been 18 years, I believe. And he has worked at several schools, and he's on the OSNA's Leadership Council. He started out as a biodynamic farmer and worked at a Camp Hill village. He is known for his positive attitude and his deep pedagogical insight. He is also an entertainer, folk singer, and guitar player. So, welcome, David. Would you start us off with the calendar of the soul?
Yes, as soon as I get over my embarrassment over your delightful introduction. Uh, I
All
will
true.
I will say this. My wife is an Waldorf early childhood teacher, Miss Kelly. And my real role in life, I've realized, is I am Mr. Teacher Kelly. That is how the children in the classes that my wife teaches know me, and that feels just right. Mr. Teacher Kelly. Good afternoon. Afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. I know it's all different times of day for those others. I'm really delighted that Deborah has allowed me to work with both verse 8 this week and verse 9 this week, because in addition to all the seasonal information that you all shared and that Deborah was bringing, we're right on the cusp of Whitsun or Pentecost as well. And it's amazing how closely related the sort of festival of Pentecost of Whitsun is to this study that we're going to take up of parents and community in a Waldorf school. And so I'm going to work with verse 8 today, recite it, and then tomorrow, verse 9. And I would love to share a couple of lines about this upcoming Pentecost Whitsun experience. But first, the verse itself. The sense's might grows strong, united with the God's creative work. It presses down my power of thinking into a dreamlike dullness. When godly being desires union with my soul, must human thinking in quiet dream life rest content? I'd like to read it one more time and then just a few words about Pentecost Whitsun. The senses might grow strong, united with the God's creative work. It presses down my power of thinking into a dreamlike dullness. When godly being desires union with my soul, must human thinking in quiet, dreamlike rest content? So the verse makes really clear we need to quiet our inner thinking and commune with the cosmos, with nature at this time of year. And then here we are right on the cusp of this Pentecost. So let's just set the scene. Good Friday, Jesus of Nazareth, Christ is crucified on the hill of Golgotha, the hill of skulls. On Easter Sunday, rises 50 days later, Pentecost, 50 days later, 50 days after Easter. The remaining disciples are gathered with about 120 people, including Mary, the mother of Jesus, to celebrate the Jewish festival known as Shavuot, the festival of weeks. So this is very interesting, right? They're gathered together 50 days after the rising of Christ to celebrate this festival. About 120 people, each speaking their own language. And then when the day of Pentecost comes, there's suddenly, and now I'm reading from Acts 2, verses 1 through 8, and suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a rushing mighty wind, and it filled the house where they were sitting. And there appeared upon them cloven tongues like as of fire, and it sat upon them, and they began to speak in other tongues. These people suddenly realized that despite their own native languages, they could understand everyone around them. They had entered into instantaneously a version of community, the version of community in many ways that Rudolf Steiner describes as the community of the future, one not based on nationality or language or bloodline or tribe, but all of these individuals entered together on their commitment to being individuals and to being in community. And I would love us just to hold to this idea of all of these parents that we meet, all these parents and teachers in the Waldorf School. And in some ways, you could say that we all come from our own countries, right? We see our child as this unique being, and then that child is now in the context of all these other entirely unique beings. And what does it really take to overcome the language barrier and really to speak in tongues like as if we had uh, cloven tongues like as of fire above us, as in this sort of Whitsun imagination. So I don't want to say too much more now, but I wanted to start the big conversation over these 2 days from sort of the most cosmic spiritual picture as possible, and then we'll get into nuts and bolts about agreements and covenants and how we treat each other. But the verse just really sparked in me and this time of year. So thank you, Deborah, for the opportunity to work with that.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. So last time we met, we were working on the control of thinking. And if you remember, we introduced the meditative exercise of control of thought and focusing on the one object. And doing that exercise provided us with more order and clarity in our thinking. So today we're moving it to the second basic exercise called the control of will. And will is a very powerful word, isn't it? Thy will be done. She has willpower. He is strong-willed. So it's more than just want. I could say, I want to do this. That is an intention, perhaps, a wish. But if you say, I will do that, that is something different. That's an inner sort of conviction and belief in action. So Steiner gives us an exercise where we can develop this capacity to work with our will, to strengthen our will so that we can, so that we are able and empowered to act upon our wants, our wishes, our desires. So where does will live in the body? With our thinking, we know that it lives in our head, and we have the imagination of the thought running down our spinal cord and out from there. Where does will live? If you think about it this way, it starts here, goes through the heart, and then out into our limbs. The will lives in our limbs. It is with our hands that we serve. It is with our feet that we walk to where we want to go. And it is even our speech is an extension of our will. So with this exercise, it's similar to the first exercise in that you will do it at the same time every day. And you just take a short amount of time. You can set your timer even. And with this exercise, you're to do a repeated activity that is completely arbitrary. So it holds no significance or purpose whatsoever. Some examples that I found were tying and retying your shoe, moving cushions around on the couch. Some other ones, I don't know what some other ones are. I remember the one that was recommended to me when I first started was to take your car keys and put them in a different place every day. And I am not recommending that one. So you can choose. I want you to today and tonight to think about what your action is going to be that you can work on, that you can focus on and make a commitment to strengthen your will. We all need will. So think about that and let me know tomorrow. Be prepared to let me know in the chat what you're choosing to do as your activity. So why do we want to strengthen our will? It helps to build endurance, perseverance. We do it with the children each day. The Waldorf children experience the same rhythm every day. That strengthens their will. The repetition strengthens their will. And I'll go into this a little bit more tomorrow, but just being able to focus on the task itself instead of focusing on the outcome of what you want is also a will developing capacity that helps you to really tackle any task that there is. So by doing this, you're strengthening the ability to follow the task, even if the task is arbitrary and doesn't really even mean anything. It means something to you. You're exercising that will muscle. So thank you. Right now we're going to move into our art classes with Nikki. Nikki, you will have until 12:45.
Okay, David, I see you're about to say something.
Well, I just wanted to point out to Deborah, maybe you don't need to answer it now, but there are a couple of questions about the exercise you just described in the chat.
Oh,
Just
thank you.
I'm going to address the second exercise also through my class today. So I can touch on that also. Thank you all for being here. It's a joy to be part of the Explorations program and get to meet you all virtually. Hopefully I'll see some of you this summer at Antioch Teacher Training maybe, or in the Kairos Institute also has a training this July or renewal. Hopefully there's lots of wonderful programs up at Wilton at High Mowing this summer. I want to start with talking about form drawing. Can I just see a raise of hands if you've heard about form drawing or done form drawing before, just so I can see that's not everybody is, a lot of people have heard about it. This is great. And some people look like they're brand new to this. So I'm going to start just a brief intro. And form drawing was created in 1919 by Rudolf Steiner. And he created, it was at the creation of the first Waldorf school that was in Stuttgart, Germany. And along with creating many streams of studies of, the Waldorf school and anthroposophic medicine and all the biodynamic practices, eurythmy. I would say eurythmy and form drawing really stemmed out of the Waldorf school model. And something he talked about also with this is, I'm going to show you, is the tripod grip. So this is a will building exercise also. When I started teacher training, I realized I did not have a tripod grip. I had a grip with the second finger. Let me see if I can do it towards the blackboard so you can see putting it on the third finger up. So you have 1, 2, 3 supporting here, your top fingers here, and then this other thumb finger. It's basically these 3 fingers are pinching it and these other 2 are coming underneath. So I realized that the first 40 years of my life, I had a different grip, and I thought, okay, I'm going to change my grip and just see if I can build my will forces to change my grip at midlife. And there was lots of note taking and art classes, and I decided I'm going to do it starting right now and take all of my notes in a different grip and do all my art classes with a different pencil grip. And it was really entertaining and fun, and it still changed. So we can do hard things. I would say that was like one of those just interesting things to say, oh, I can still learn and grow in hard ways. That something that's such an established habit, when we change something in our habit body, there's new things that can come through, new life force and ways of being. I highly recommend, if you have a different pencil grip than the tripod grip, try it out for a little bit or try it during this class. It potentially, for me, all my writing was more sloppy. My artwork wasn't as precise. I see a question, what is the purpose of the grip being so precise? Maybe just that I was used to having more clean writing or clean artwork. It's just an activity to build your will if you wish to take it up. That is a more ongoing practice. And I want to start with, in first grade, kind of most Waldorf schools, I would say on the first day of first grade, if this has been your practice, if you're already a grades teacher, you know what I'm going to say. Start with the straight and the curved line. And if you don't already have a piece of paper in front of you, please get a piece of paper and something to draw with. You could have colored pencils or just a regular pencil. really whatever you have on hand will work. I'm going to switch my camera, so just give me a moment. So with the straight and the curved line, the teacher would potentially have the class move the straight line with their bodies first, move the curved line with their bodies, kind of walking in the classroom in straight lines or walking the curve, you know, in a circle around the desks, and being able to feel it in their body first, and then being able to come up to the chalkboard. Every teacher does it differently, so being able to come up to the chalkboard and pull a straight line and then do a curved line. Or they may work at their desks, depending on what resources you have and what school you're at. So it's a really good practice to kind of check in with your body, take a deep breath, and I'm going to pull a straight line. It's actually can be pretty tricky to get a nice clean straight line or a nice curved line. And I'm going to do that right now so you can observe, and then you'll have watch first, and then you'll have a chance to do it across your paper. Okay, can everybody see that? There's a straight and a curved line. So take a moment and go across the top of your page, making a straight and a curved line.
Nikki, do you want it like that, like that kind of curve, or is it like a different kind of curve we can do?
Just a half curve, like a half circle, like half of a curve of a circle. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And the straight line shows direction, intent, regularity, structure, and definition. So direction, intention, regularity, structure, and definition. The curved line shows movement, life, tension, and has a life of its own. The curve is also like the mother, the wholeness, and gathering when you put two together. So I want to show you when you put two curved lines together, and you would obviously not say show it as like half and half, but as one movement. And you will see it happen here. It is the circle. So two curved lines make a circle. It's the mother, the wholeness, gathering. And then two straight lines is more the kind of masculine, the father energy, division, separation. These are just archetypal energies, right? The circle is the more feminine archetypal energy. The cross, these two straight lines, create more of a masculine archetypal energy. Another form, curving form is the lemniscape. And you can kind of feel, you could go back and forth and just feel this, feel that form. It's a sideways figure 8. Oh, and I see your question, Jennifer. Good to see you, Jennifer. The straight line is direction, intention, regularity, structure, and definition. And the two straight lines together is the masculine, division, and separation. Does anybody want to hear the curved line again? You could just raise your hand and I could, yes, okay. So the curved line, movement, life, tension. It has a life of its own. And the two curved lines together making the circle, it's more the feminine, the mother energy, wholeness, and gathering. The lemniscape that we did last, the figure 8, laying down figure 8, this is found a lot in flow forms and is, you know, moved in eurythmy. It is rhythm, balance between 2 points. So there's that crossing of the midline there, and it's where there's more, where it comes to 1 point and there's that movement to the right and the movement to the left, and it's this kind of balancing between, you know, a midpoint, right and left. The next form, very archetypal form, is a spiral. And the spiral is development and movement. You can go from center to periphery or the other way around. So you could start from the periphery and move towards the center. You could have the circle move, you know, the spiral move to the right or to the left. So you could start by going up on the right or up on the left. You can spiral in or you can spiral out. It shows growth and metamorphosis. So the spiral is development and movement. You can go center to periphery or the other way around. And it shows growth and metamorphosis. Another form that, oh, hold on just a second. Sorry about that. Another form is a mirroring form, and it can be vertical or horizontal. And it's where there is a midline and a form on the right that is mirrored on the left, or left and right. So I'll start with a horizontal and then I will show, or I'll start with the vertical and then I'll show you a horizontal. Oh, I'm seeing it's getting a little bit cut off. Sorry about that. So as above, so below. You know, the aim is to have the reflection, you know, as best you can. I can see that I'm a little bit off. I just had someone who was having a moment of emergency, so I can see my center is a little, uh, little off, and that happens. I can take some deep breaths in, find my center again, and try again. The mirroring is present in nature. You can see that a lot in nature. It is problem solving. So when the student is needing to mirror something on either side, it's working on the right and the left hemisphere of the brain. You have to comprehend it as a whole before recreating it on the opposite side. So it takes a lot of concentration, but also just it's a good way to see in your class too. Just something to observe how the students are drawing these forms, and it's just another layer of information that you can take in from your student. The next forms I'm going to show are developmental forms. So these are things that kind of grow and are also very observable in nature. So this is these concentric circles that are kind of growing from the base and moving upward. You can do it with triangle or squares. Or maybe I want to show like a flame. That could be another developmental form. It can be kind of a representation of seed to a fruit, intention to product, outer to inner. They change gradually. The shapes are related, but they're different. So I'll say it again, developmental forms show development and transformation. A seed to a fruit, intention to product, outer to inner. They change gradually. The shapes are related, but they're different. And in first grade, once you have started with the straight and the curved line, typically you could go then into, typically what people do is they go into these very kind of elemental forms. So I will show you, maybe they will start with these little mountain tops. And you can move that all the way across a main lesson page book. You can use different colors. So take a moment and draw these little mountain tops. The aim being that the tops of the mountains line up and the bottom of the mountains line up, like as if you were drawing it in lined paper as you're going across the page. Of course, in your class, they're not going to be working on lined paper. It'll be just a blank page. So it's a good system of finding how to have an aim as you move across. Of course, I'm using a lot of words to describe this, but in your class, you would just be doing it with young children. You would just be demonstrating it. They're picking it up from your inner life, and by you showing it to them, then they will be making it across the page. I'm using a lot of words to you as an adult teacher speaking to adults. So of course there wouldn't be all these words with teaching form drawing. And these little mountains could be used to hide the letter M as you're teaching the alphabet in first grade. So then there's these visual pictures of an M, like a mountain hidden in the M hidden in the shape of a mountain that then has this beauty and imagery linked to the letter. So through drawing, then out comes writing. And another good form following up for the opposite of the straight is the curved. And these make really nice little E's, cursive E's, as you move across the page. Form drawing can help with hand-eye coordination, with inner balance, with feeling of form and structure. Another form, we'll go back to a straight form. I call this one castle tops. So more of that side of the paper. Okay. And even these three basic forms in a main lesson book. So if you're not familiar to Waldorf education, a main lesson book is where the children create all their work for the morning, the main learning block, which is usually typically in the morning. And they can create really beautiful borders around maybe what they're drawing or what their writing is. And these forms also make really great borders. So usually creating a border around your work. And I see questions coming in, and I will hopefully have a little bit of time to address some of these questions. I just see the last one about charcoal. I am using charcoal just so you can see it well on this piece of paper. Typically you would use your chalkboard, which is upright. And I'll show some work on the chalkboard next. And I would use different colors of chalk, typically is what I do. I'm mainly using charcoal, so it is a high contrast for you to see it well on this brown piece of paper. I'm going to do a couple more forms. So you can do a simple spiral or a wave. And then as you progress the wave can spiral in on itself and spiral back out. So I'm going to show that next over here. And you can have it spiral more or less. There are forms that combine straight and curved lines. running into my spiral there, but half a wave. And then a straight line. And then the wave again, and then a straight. Wave again, and then a straight, and then waving back up. If you flipped this image, it would be the same. So it's a mirror image. So it's the same on the top as it is on the bottom. This one is another mirror image with just straight lines. So it's M's and W's. So if I were to divide it in half, it would be the same as the top as on the bottom. You can make it go all the way across the page. I only have so much space on my paper, so very large paper, but just wanted to make it really big so you could see it. I only have a couple more moments left. So I wanted to share a little bit about the will building exercise. Is that I found the same summer I changed my pencil grip. I also, in the first summer of teacher training at Antioch, I also decided that after dinner at the same time every day, I would go to a room with a chalkboard. It was in the library, and I would make the same 5 forms every single day at the same exact time. So I wanted to work on this second exercise as a will building exercise, and I found that form drawing was kind of a way for me, even though it's also somewhat arbitrary because it's not like creating something, but it's using this. It's not like I'm planting flowers or doing something like that, but using the form drawing as a way, as a moving meditation that I find when I make art, and it's always been like this, that it is kind of a very therapeutic process for me and a way of bringing myself right into the center. And I also found that my mind wasn't busy because I was just doing the same thing, a very rhythmic activity. So when you can bring rhythm into the will building, it's, you know, that it's being done at the same time, it's using the same exact forms, and it can be, I just used the very simple, you know, up and down and the spiral, maybe the castle tops. I just made the most simple forms. So it wasn't that I had to try really hard to make them happen, but that potentially you could use that as one of your will building exercises, or the one that you work with, if that speaks to you, if you're somebody who drawing is a meditative practice. And I just will look through the questions. I have a form drawing paper that I can share with you. I did 30 weeks of form drawing in a residential high school treatment center. So I was working with a mixed 9th through 12th grade. I've always held the question once I was in my early 20s when I started a nonprofit and worked with really high risk for 7 years in juvenile hall and group homes. And, you know, how could I share the healing work of making art with the people most in need? And I would work once I started working at the Waldorf school, I'd work in residential treatment Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I worked at the Waldorf school Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. And, you know, it's kind of like the great dichotomy. But for me, the question was, um, how do I share this healing education that I was exposed to only as an adult and was benefiting from? How can I also bring this healing Waldorf education to the ones who need it the most? So I did a study on this for 30 weeks, and I see actually that I'm at time. And so I will need to, I'll take a screenshot of these questions and be able to answer some of your questions tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome. And make sure that you have pastels, rainbow pastels, just an array of color, and maybe up to 3 sheets of paper. A little bit thicker than copy paper would be best. Thank you so much.
Oh,
That was a cliffhanger. I love it. We learned that as teachers, right? Always end your lesson on a cliffhanger. Make the students know that they need to come back tomorrow to hear what happens next. Should I jump right in, Deborah?
Yes, please.
Great. Hello again, everybody. Wonderful to do that artistic work with Nikki, and tomorrow even more. What we're going to do now is we have about 13 minutes, and then we're going to take a bio break, and then we'll come back. And I wanted to once again sort of contextualize what I want to do with you today and tomorrow, but then I want to ask you a couple of questions. Out of anthroposophy, out of Rudolf Steiner's work, out of the Waldorf movement, we get these two extraordinary new ways of thinking about the world. On one hand, the individual human being, right? The whole point of the Waldorf School is to help educate human beings who can act out of freedom, who can feel out of freedom, who can think out of freedom, not bound by any external laws or norms or the Constitution or what have you, but out of a real sense of inward ethical individualism. And then out of anthroposophy, we also have this extraordinary picture of the community of the future. And in some ways, our Waldorf schools are these communities of the future, these non-hierarchical places, spaces in which the development of individual human beings, young and old, can take place. The possibilities are endless. They're extraordinary possibilities of growth, of change. You know, once you break down the lanes that hierarchies create, you have this potential for all this creative human interaction. And you have this potential for all of this really painful crashing up against each other, right? And so whether we make something that resembles the realm of angels or something that resembles more of a roller derby rink is kind of up to us. But what we're not going to do is put limits on individual human freedom and put those lanes into the school communities. Obviously, there are some, and we'll talk about those. But what we're really trying to do is see what can we do when conscious adults put their children in the care of professional, Waldorf trained educators, and then work with the adults, both the teachers and the parents around them, to create a new form of community. So before we talk a little bit about Torren's work in this guided self-study and reincarnation of the spirit, body, soul, and spirit, I'd like to ask you to do a little work in the chat. I know there's a whole other thing going on here in the chat, but if we could, I would love you to put in the chat answers to a couple of questions. The first question is, what is your current, and I'll ask you to put these in together, so you can put like one. What is your current role, if any, in a Waldorf school, or roles? Are you in a Waldorf community? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? Are you an administrator? Are you a community elder, mentor? So can you please put in what's your role or roles, if any, in a Waldorf community? And if no role, that's fine. And then number two, what type of, if you are a part of a Waldorf community, is this a homeschool? Is this some kind of a post-COVID educational pod? Is this a public charter alliance school? Is this an independent school? Is this a government school? I'm just trying to get a sense of who's out there, yeah? And they're coming in hard and heavy, which I love here. So let me, wow, where do they start? No role administrator, parent, and teacher, none. Waldorf homeschool, great. Grade 1, 2 teacher, EC parent, EC teacher assistant, a Spanish teacher, lovely. None. Teacher administrator, orchestra teacher, beautiful. Parent and volunteer at a public charter school, another public charter school, behavior specialist, director of education, hoping to be a part of one. parent, administrator, early childhood, Waldorf School, high school, Wendy. I'm a founder, community elder, a mentor, beautiful, homeschool teacher, independency. This is what I was hoping to see. It's really important, I think, for all of us to recognize that when we talk about Waldorf education today, we are talking about independent schools. We are talking about schools that are funded partially or entirely out of government money. We are talking about schools that are taking place in people's houses and in backyards. It's an extraordinary variety. Public charter, fifth grade, future middle school. Yes, right on. Sketchbook is fun. Oh, now we've got some independent, parent teacher, reading teacher, public charter. A lot of public school and public charter school teachers. That's fantastic. Deborah, fantastic, right? Seacoast Waldorf School, fantastic. Great. Look at these teacher, administrator, and parent, right? Teacher, administrator, and parent. We're talking about some of the most complicated sets of relationships. You know, these Waldorf communities have such intense integrated relationships because we wear so many hats, so many of us. Camp Hill, public upgrade. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just going through this list. I'm hoping you go through this list as well, just to see who you're in these boxes with. It's an extraordinary group here. Is there a list of charter high schools? There are. I'll just come to that one in a sec. There are only 6 or 7 Waldorf public charter high schools in the Alliance for Public Waldorf Education, and you can find them on the Alliance for Public Waldorf Education website, but there's only 6 or 7 of them, and actually only 38 independent OSNA Waldorf high schools in North America. Okay, thank you, and you can keep throwing those in there. I should just share that in my role as the Waldorf High School teacher education program director, there are a number of students here in Explorations, some who are in the program, some who will be finishing this summer, some who will just be starting. And so, have this nice connection with those folks in a different way. But it's really lovely to be here. Thank you. So we're going to try to think, when we think about Waldorf community, we're going to think about this in the largest possible way, that there are teachers, that those teachers may also serve as administrators. Those teachers may also serve as parents. There are parents. And we're all coming together in a really intense time in world history, right? I talk about how we are teaching in a world on fire, but we are parenting in a world on fire, right? We are running schools in a world on fire. And we're trying to not fall into the traps that have led us to some of these conflagrations that we do our work against. And so the kind of conscious intention that Deborah was speaking about with exercise number 2, or that Deborah was speaking about with the artwork, we need to bring this to our work as members of a Waldorf community. So just a couple minutes before the break, let's just take a bit of a picture. Let's get really big picture. When Torin shares in his book, Guided Self-Study, this picture of the body, soul, and spirit, he is giving us a picture that leads us to reincarnation, right? He talks about the body is subject to the laws of heredity and subject to birth and death. And through the fact that we have a physical body, we are part of a human genus, like a crow or a pygmy marmoset, right? Like we're part of a wholeness. Then we have this soul that is subject to destiny and karma and mediates between body and soul during the course of earthly life. And then we have this piece of us that is eternal, this spirit that is subject to the laws of reincarnation, Rudolf Steiner and Torin Finzer tell us, and repeated earth lives. And in this way, we have to recognize that every human being that we see in front of us, so you're in the parking lot of your Waldorf school, and you are looking at these other people around you, we have to recognize that what is not visible to us is the fact that every one of these people is their own genus, is their own species. This picture that we get from Rudolf Steiner of the threefold human being can lead us to this idea that it's not nurture versus nature. It's really this idea that each human being is made up of a hereditary stream, right? I look like my father, because I have, and sometimes like my mother. When my son was born, everyone always told me, your son Adriel looks like Kelly, looks like you, looks like Kelly, except when he has a strong emotion, then he looks like you. Right? So there's this hereditary stream we all have, but there is this eternal stream that we all have, this ever incarnating stream that is our spirit. Now, the work of Waldorf teachers is the healthy unification of what we can think of as this temporal stream, this hereditary stream, and this eternal permanent stream. And so each individual adult that we encounter when we are sitting in the administrator's office because we're furious about something, or when our teacher is trying to share with us some concern they have about the behavior of our child, where we are dealing in intense situations with people, with human beings who are entire species unto themselves. In Steiner's first major book, The Philosophy of Spiritual Activity, he speaks about the fact that each of us is an individual genus, and that if we confuse the fact that when I look at you, I see a man, or I see a woman, or I see a white person. There's this beautiful quote from the Philosophy of Spiritual Activity. It is impossible to understand a human being completely if one takes the concept of genus as the basis of one's judgment. Almost invariably, man sees in woman and woman in man too much of the general character of the other sex and too little of what is individual. And then Steiner, in 1894, goes on to say, in practical life, this does less harm to men than it does to women. He was aware that having not achieved equity in terms of gender or ethnicities, we must work with this lack of equity. From the very start, we have to recognize that we are dealing with the most complicated topic in the world, individual human beings trying to form communities made up of individual human beings. We're there because of the children. We put the children in the center, and then we allow ourselves to be open to a series of experiences. When we come back from the break, I want to give a brief history of Waldorf education, how Steiner's attempts to deal with what he saw in what he called, what we call the Great War, led to the formation of the Waldorf School with its twofold mission. Because what we're going to be talking about today has been inherent in the work of Waldorf education from its very start, the work of changing the social world for the better. So on one hand, right, educating children, on the other, coming together as adults and doing things differently than they have been done. So I want to leave you as we head into the break with this idea that there's real work to be done. When we enter into a Waldorf school, we are making an implicit agreement to see and value the individuality of each and every person that we encounter, even as we move through probably some of the most difficult situations and conversations we will ever have in our life. All right. So we're going to take a little break, 5 minutes, right? We'll come back at 5 past the hour. You actually get a little bit of a 5.5 minutes. Come back at 5 past the hour, and we'll do a little bit of a history lesson. So we'll see you really soon. Right on. Welcome back, everybody. As we settle back in, so what we are going to be talking about today and tomorrow is individuality within community, right? And how a group of striving individual adults can form something together. I wanted to share. I can share my screen, right, Deborah?
Yes.
Great. Can you all see that? Rudolf Steiner gives this picture of the fundamental social law, and it feels like an important place to begin. Rudolf Steiner says, and of course, in English translation, there, the healthy social life is found when in the mirror of each human soul, the whole community finds its reflection. And when in the community, the virtue of each individual is living. Read that one more time. The fundamental social law. The healthy social life is found when in the mirror of each human soul, the whole community finds its reflection, and when in the community, the virtue of each individual is living. Can we, can some folks just sort of respond to that? What does that say to you? Maybe you're hearing that for the first time. Maybe that is something you are very familiar with. But I'd love to hear just a little reflecting on Rudolf Steiner's fundamental social law. Probably easier if you throw up your hand, electronic hand. There we go. Ruthie, is that it? Please.
Yeah, I that resonates a lot with me. To me, it just represents at the core of balancing of the rights of all. Because the group has rights, but the individual has rights, and neither are perfectly free. But there can be a balance that's fair.
Fantastic. And we are going to be talking specifically about rights in a few minutes. Other reflections? I saw a couple of them are coming in on the chat. I am myself and I see myself in you, coming together even through differences. Thank you for both of those. Finding commonality, right? Okay. So please keep all of this, it's a lot. Now I'm asking you to start stacking these things up. Reincarnation and karma and destiny, the fundamental social law. It's 1919. So can I take you back now? And the Great War has devastated Europe. Following on the heels of the first mechanized war, right, with mustard gas and other weapons of mass destruction and machine gun and airplanes and submarines, terrible death toll, followed by a global pandemic, the so-called Spanish flu, and the world is devastated. And Rudolf Steiner can see that even worse devastation is going to come to humanity if it does not change the way in which society has been structured. That whatever the specific issues that led to the Black Hand assassinating the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and the Duchess Sophie, which leads to the conflict that we call now World War I, which was then called the Great War. Rudolf Steiner recognizes that something has to change in a dramatic and fundamental way. This is also now, if we think about this, it's not post 1917. The Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin bringing this concept of communism from Karl Marx out into the world in a sort of model in Russia and eventually the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, over in America, Woodrow Wilson bringing about his 18 points and making the world safe for democracy. And so there's this battle in some ways raging between ideologies. It's being played out in the most violent way possible. Rudolf Steiner sees the danger. And of course, we understand now that he was absolutely right? That the next war would be even more savage. The Holocaust, the dropping of weapons of mass destruction on a civilian population. And Rudolf Steiner works with intense fever and fervor to try to convince politicians and economists and generals in Germany and throughout Europe that there needs to be a change. He has a plan. And he writes a book that becomes a New York Times bestseller. He gives lectures that fill up huge halls. He's like the, Taylor Swift on the stage. And yet, you have to be honest, his ideas don't find an audience, a small audience of students of anthroposophy, but he was looking for real transformation at a governmental level. And he recognizes that these ideas that he had, he would call them the threefold social organism. People aren't ready for them yet. And so the lack of readiness for the ideas of the threefold social organism, what Steiner would call a social threefolding that mirrors the threefoldness of the human being. The human being is a being of body, soul, and spirit, we're told by Rudolf Steiner. And when we have a unified society in which economics and power seem to always get the upper hand, we can't help but get ourselves into violent conflict types of situations. He tries desperately to bring about this change. He can't. Now, Rudolf Steiner is nothing if not a practical man. Deborah was talking about will. You want to talk about will. So every time Rudolf Steiner met an obstacle, he simply overcame it. When his beautiful first Goetheanum, built entirely out of wood, was burnt to the ground, probably by arson, and his followers and students were devastated, he said, don't worry, we'll just rebuild it again. And this time we'll build it out of poured concrete. I always think there's like a subtext there. Let him try to burn this one down. So he fails in his attempts to convert or to share the threefold social organism with key figures in German society. And so instead, he says, so what I need to do is to take the long view and to create an educational system that over a long period of time will create human beings who are capable of understanding and living in a different way on the earth, perhaps in this threefold social organism. So we have to recognize in its history, the Waldorf School is, this is going to sound terrible, a consolation prize for the transformation of society. A better way to say it is Rudolf Steiner recognized you can't do this quickly. He was sort of like a soccer player. You can't just make a direct line for the goal, right? You have to move strategically. And he took the long view and said, Waldorf education is going to come to Earth and we're going to be able to help transform generation after generation after generation. We're now post 100 years of Waldorf education, of educating human beings not to fit into their society only, not to be good consumers only, not to follow the Constitution only, but to understand and seek their own human destiny. So another thing I want us to focus on is that within the Waldorf movement, from the very beginning, there has always been, can you see that? I can't see you. Can you see that? No, good. Let me share it with you. Can you see that?
Yes.
The twofold mission of Waldorf education, founded in 1919 out of the ashes of the Great War, Waldorf education has always had a twofold mission. Obviously, an educational mission to recognize the unique and equal value of every human being in and of itself, an entirely profound mission statement, but simultaneously a social mission to foster social renewal by cultivating human capacities in service to the individual and to society. And this is going to be important for us to understand when we talk about parents and community. The Waldorf schools are devoid of formal hierarchy. They are full of the potential of real, open-hearted human community. Parents play an extraordinary role in these communities, right? They entrust their most prized, I don't want to say possession, but their most prized, I can't think of the right word, their children. Someone says, I will let you have my children 6 hours a day. That's extraordinary, right? And beyond that, they also provide financial resources to the school so it can do its work, that allows teachers to do their sacred calling and bring it, have a viable life path. Parents provide unbelievable and important expertise in legal, financial, investing, development work, outreach, marketing work. They provide really important feedback and, of course, sweat equity in the form of volunteering, chaperoning, cooking, baking. I had a parent once say to me, only in a Waldorf school would I be asked to bake a lasagna, bring it to school, and then purchase slices of the lasagna that I paid for and made as part of a school fundraiser. And yet, there we go. Right? Now, parents are so much more than lasagna and cookie makers, but they are lasagna and cookie makers also. There was a question here. What do you mean by no formal hierarchy? What I mean by no formal hierarchy, I believe that modern society recognizes that human beings are volatile creatures, that we're not entirely fully developed yet, and that in large corporations and in the government, keeping people in a hierarchical situation where one has power and authority over another prevents sort of all-out warfare, right? In the Waldorf school, the class teacher is no higher than the parent. The administrator is no higher than the teacher. The board is no higher than the college of teachers. We have agreed to collectively work together, sort of like the blind man and the elephant, each with our area of expertise and what we can perceive of the overall mission. And the healthier and better we work together. Now, this lack of structural hierarchy, because of course there can be law of the jungle hierarchy. Certain individuals may take power, but in terms of stated hierarchy, we're working in an essentially flat organization where we are equals. And again, that leads to the world of possibilities. That leads to the often tearful situations that we sometimes find. There is this inherent challenge in Waldorf education and in Waldorf schools. I had a friend who used to say, he would touch you on the shoulder and say, where do you feel that? And you'd say, I feel that in my shoulder. And he said, oh, I feel it in my finger. Right? We are coming from different perspectives in every encounter. And so
How you doing?
the parent is the expert
Oh,
on
gosh.
their individual
Like night and
child.
day.
Nobody
That was
knows somebody.
they sent me home.
Can we mute that person, please? Nobody knows the child better in the home.
Yeah, they told me that, like when you have to come off them, you have to wean. It wasn't like I intentionally
Sorry,
forgot
I'm
it.
getting
I went
there.
down to my parents and I kept my stuff in my bag.
There we go.
Thank you. But then that parent brings their child to school and puts them into this community of learners, community of playground players. And in some ways, the teacher has an entirely different set of observations and becomes an expert in that child in a social context in an entirely different way. When those work together well, it's extraordinary. When someone tells me, what you don't see is my child at bedtime each night, and I say, what you don't see is your child, on the ball field. So not that yours is better, mine is better, but when we put those together, we start to come to a richer and more full picture of that child. And when the relationships are healthy, incredible dynamic possibilities, full of potential. And when trust erodes, things can turn ugly and the results can be sad. And let's be honest, destiny altering, right? A child comes to a Waldorf school, parents come with all this extraordinary hope, something goes astray. Maybe the parent was a teacher in the school. Maybe they leave their position and the child has to go to a different form of schooling. So we want to be very conscious that we are dealing in everyday interactions with potential destiny altering situations. Now, Rudolf Steiner gives this picture of the threefold social organism. Let me circle back. This is what he was trying to get across to the leaders in Europe at a really devastated time and was unable to do so. He tells us, and I'm going to share my screen again. Can you see that? Yes, good. He tells us there are three spheres in this threefold social organism. A sphere called the cultural sphere, a sphere called the rights sphere, and a sphere called the economic sphere. Now, I'm not going to be able to do this justice, but I wanted to give a bit of a background here because someone mentioned earlier about rights. Inside the Waldorf School, all three of these spheres are living. And the more we can understand them, the better chance we have of healthy relationships within the Waldorf School. The cultural sphere is what Steiner refers to as the sphere of freedom. Everything, can you see that? Let's see, I can make it bigger. I hope that you can see that. Everything that works toward human development, everything that nurtures the life of the soul, that develops individual skills, that searches for knowledge, that fosters the striving for individual achievement and excellence in education, in the arts, in religion, in science, in entertainment, in training. In this sphere, every human being is an individual, experiencing him or herself as an I, with feelings, thoughts, desires, abilities, and the urge to create or achieve something. In this sphere, the freedom of the individual must be seen as inviolable. We are not equal in this sphere, right? Many of us can pick up the alto or soprano saxophone, and some will play it like John Coltrane, and it will be a thing of beauty. And some will make a squawking noise that is, truly a horrific thing to experience. We are free, but we are not equal. And in this sphere, so there's a realm in society and in the Waldorf School in which we are free but not equal. I just want to stop my share for 1 sec and see if that concept makes sense. Steiner talks about the reason that the French Revolution failed was because it failed to take into account that all three of its ideals of freedom, equality, and brotherhood, sisterhood were important, but they needed to be put into separate aspects of society because society needed to be threefolded. So that picture, that very brief picture I just gave of the spiritual cultural sphere, does that make sense? Are there any questions? And it's helpful to say them out. Do we have access to these slides? I can share the slides at the end. Yes, yes. Yeah, there's a lot of writing on these slides. Okay, so that's one of the three spheres. So try to picture your life in the aspects of your life in which you need absolute freedom to fail, the books you choose to read, the places you choose to go, the creative endeavors you take up, and picture that in the Waldorf School. Picture the teacher having absolute freedom in the realm of the curriculum, right? What they teach, when they teach it, how they teach it. But, and I go back now to sharing, but you can see this? Yes. Another realm is the right sphere. In this sphere, we are all equal. The overcoming, so in the past, antisocial forces were held in check by family, by tribe, or religion. Now, in our modern world, we need things like law and regulations and codes of conduct and freely entered into agreements like covenants, which I will be speaking about. In this sphere, all opinions are equal. There are realms within the Waldorf School in the right sphere in which it doesn't matter if you're a parent, an administrator, a trustee, a teacher, you have an equal say. So for example, the school calendar, perhaps, or the time that the school day starts, or how late aftercare goes in the afternoon. These may potentially be rights sphere issues. And the healthy Waldorf School is going to be the one that figures out what kinds of decisions fit into which of these three realms. I wouldn't want to be part of a Waldorf School in which we make votes about what the fifth grade teacher teaches in the classroom. But we probably need to be clear with each other. Are we going to take 3 days off for Thanksgiving, or the full week, and add those days on, to make the year shorter? These kinds of questions, right? Okay, are we going to pave the driveway of the school? By the way, Douglas Gerwin says when a starting school gets to its driveway paving phase, things are about to change in the school, and not always for the better. It's better on the undercarriages of the cars, but not always for the community. I'll let that just sit there as a little mystery for a moment. So the spiritual cultural sphere, in which we must have freedom, but we are not equal. The right sphere, Rudolf Steiner, like actually Adam Smith, the man who wrote Wealth of Nations and began capitalism, says the only role of government really should be to make sure that the rules and regulations, the laws, are enacted and carried out equally, right? And in the Waldorf school, the same thing. Nobody, the big donor in the school doesn't get to do this. Who's making sure that we are all treated equally and have equal access to decision-making around things that concern us all? Now, the final sphere is, I think, the most interesting, sharing again. The economic sphere, brotherhood, sisterhood. My new favorite term is compassionate interdependence. The economic sphere, and maybe this is the most paradoxical sphere, all human activity related to production, distribution, and consumption, what you think of as the stuff of an economics course or of economics. When we inhabit a physical body, we all need the transformed substance of earth, mineral, plant, and animal, as well as sub-nature forces such as electricity and magnetism, but we are not free. Nobody can produce everything that they need for themselves. We depend upon the work of others. No one can live without the basic necessities of life, and no one can produce these basic necessities of life entirely by themselves. And we're not equal in this sphere. Some need more, some need less. We have different strengths and talents. Steiner tells us the place for ruthless competition is in the soprano saxophone contest. It's not in the economic sphere. He says one of the problems with modern society is this idea that we get of in the marketplace, I have to sell high, buy low, you are my competitor, every man, woman for themselves. He says that that competition could be in the cultural, spiritual sphere, but this idea of brotherhood, sisterhood, mutual interdependence. I want to give one example. I was a longtime member of the Temple Wilton Community Farm, one of the first biodynamic community-supported agriculture projects in the United States. The way share prices were determined, once a year, all the members of the farm would gather in the Pine Hill Waldorf School eurythmy room, and the farmers would present a large worksheet up on the blackboard. This is how much money it costs us to produce food for 100 families. Here's the tractor costs and seed, a little bit of health insurance for the farmers, a basic salary. And now there's 100 of you, and we've got this number, say it's $427,000. We need to figure out how to meet that. So everyone's going to go around the room and make a monthly pledge. And if we reach that number on the first round, we're done, we go home. If not, we're going to have to keep going. And so you may end up in a situation in which a very wealthy person who has no children might end up paying a lot per month because they have a lot, even though they don't need a lot of vegetables or raw biodynamic milk. And a mother with 5 children who doesn't have a lot of income at the moment may pay a very little bit, but also needs to take a lot. So no relationship between the amount paid and the vegetables taken, right? And of course, Waldorf schools could do this as well. There's an operating cost, and we could divide those costs unequally based on need. However, we tend to not do that. Schools have experimented with that. But that's a radical example of can we come up with economic models that aren't just here's the price and you pay it, and if you can't afford to pay it, then you can't have it. So that is my entirely too fast overview of the threefold social organism. I encourage you to look further into this. I would say this is one of Steiner's ideas that is still unfolding and is perhaps for the distant future. But within the Waldorf School, we are trying to work with that. even if your initial tour from the admissions person never mentioned threefold social organism, we're trying to be conscious of human relationships and the various levels in which we interact. Someone asked, what book is this from? You'll find it in a number of places. Can I come back to you tomorrow? Because like with a lot of things with Rudolf Steiner, in some ways, reading a book by, say, Gary Lamb is almost easier to get the information that you're probably looking for. But I can come with a bit of a reading list for those interested in the threefold social organism. What are yeah. So let me do that tomorrow. This is a great modern skill, isn't it? To be like fully present, presenting, and reading the chat at the same time. So the threefold social organism is what Rudolf Steiner would have given to the world. And instead, we get the Waldorf School. And in many ways, the Waldorf schools are keeping alive this concept of the threefold social organism. You could picture a school in which there is no tuition and there is no faculty salary. And a group of people enter into conversation, human conversation with each teacher. What do you need? And into each parent, what can you pay? And if we find that sweet spot, and parents can and teachers can live with this idea that I'm doing the same job as the person across the hall from me, but they're making infinitely more because they have aging parents and young children, and I'm actually a single parent or single person. All sorts of possibilities. But it lets us know that perhaps there are certain places within the school, like the curriculum, like human development, in which the teachers with their expertise, because they have done their teacher training and studied the pedagogical anthropology of Rudolf Steiner, have a freedom that is not sort of up for vote. And then there are realms in which there are things up for votes because we are all equal in the right sphere. And then there is the reality that if we're going to transform the world, the more that we can work toward this brotherhood, sisterhood way of working with money, that's going to be a transformative element. Okay. Let me stop for a moment. I'm throwing a lot at you. Any questions that want to be sounded or any comments that want to be made at this point? Okay. Just looking. I can only see one screen at a time, so those little electronic hands are really helpful. Is there a Cliff Notes kind of book? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We'll share Cliff Notes. In fact, literally, there are graphic novels of Steiner's teachings that we can recommend and share. It's funny, my bookshelf is just to the left of me. I just can't do three things at once. So I'll bring those tomorrow. Pat, please. You're muted.
So in this evolving place of Waldorf education, moving into the public realm, I'm wondering if there are good references for the obvious difficulties we have with hierarchy. We sit in a district. It is hierarchical. However, we are a Waldorf quote unquote inspired school,
Absolutely.
not a charter school. We don't have that structure. Just a question for the group.
So I'd love to say something and then open it up. It's a fantastic question. So there are three sets of Waldorf principles out in North America right now. Each one of them is a fascinating study. The Pedagogical Section of North America, Pedagogical Section Council of North America, put out a set of basic core principles for Waldorf education. The Association of Waldorf Schools of North America put out a set of 7, now 8 principles for Waldorf education. And the Alliance for Public Education, which recognized, as was it Pat spoke to, there are natural hierarchies in that, when you're using tax dollars, there are compliance issues, there are government agencies we have to deal with. They have their own set of principles, and I believe that one of the most important things happening in sort of the world right now is the wrestlings of public charter Waldorf schools with how to maintain freedom in education within the potentially confining context of government interference. Now, Christopher Young, who has to deal with the Ontario Education Ministry, is saying, you don't know nothing, minor league. So and take my hat off to all of the teachers who are working in these systems. In the charter school, we're taking out this element of money. In some ways, you could say this is really mutual interdependence in the economic realm, that anybody who wants a Waldorf education, and of course can win the lottery, can go to these schools. And Steiner, right from the start, recognized there would be compromises. He said we can never compromise with the truth, but just about everything shy of the truth, we can make compromises to bring this out into the world. And so there are compromises in our independent schools in that we sometimes can't take a student because their parents can't afford to pay. And there are compromises within the public charter schools because they are working within the context of government oversight. And we're all trying to figure out what is the essence of Waldorf education and what is the essence of the adult communities that form around these schools that is inviolable regardless of the compromises we might have to make. Um, I'd like to speak for a moment. What we're heading to, just so you know, some of you like and some of you don't like breakout groups. I want to say a few more things, and then I want to put us in groups where we actually work out a real life bump, hurdle, challenge from a Waldorf community that really was very difficult for the adults, and to see how we might handle that. I want to talk about covenant versus contract. Much of what we're talking about here is covenantal in nature. Most schools have a contract. The parents sign a contract saying you will pay this much money, and in exchange, we will give you this many days of Waldorf education. The teacher's contract says you will come to school at this time, you will leave at this time, you will have this many parent evenings, you will be available for chaperoning dances, etc. And all that's important. But there is this covenant, this unspoken set of agreements, not what we legally agree to with our signature on a piece of paper, but what we pledge to do. I believe teachers enter into a covenantal agreement with the parents and their colleagues that I will strive to do my best to bring my teaching out of a deep understanding of human development that was given to us by Rudolf Steiner, this pedagogical anthropology. As imperfect as my understanding is, this is what I will strive to bring. So when I am teaching anatomy and physiology, I won't automatically teach that the heart is a pump, even though Rudolf Steiner's picture of the heart is very complicated. I'm going to bring my wrestlings, my inner work on the nature of the heart as given to us by Rudolf Steiner, and the importance he places on why young people need to hear an alternative vision of the place of the human heart and the human organism other than as a pump. I'm going to do my best. That's a covenantal agreement I enter into. However imperfect my understanding is of anthroposophy and the picture of human development from an anthroposophical perspective, that's what I'm going to give my best. And parents, they have a covenantal agreement as well, right? And in some ways, the more I think that we can come to articulate what those covenantal agreements are in terms of things like conflict resolution, can we ask a parent, if you have a concern, please take it through this process? Can we ask a teacher to recognize that they may be called out if they act defensive in a conversation with a parent? Because what we're really striving for here is a meeting of adult minds and hearts, not status or authority, right? So this idea that this covenantal realm, the more conscious we make it, those agreements that we freely enter into but are not in a contract that we sign, are in some ways at the heart of the success or lack of in the Waldorf community. So I'd like to ask you, if we're inscribing, a number of schools will put classroom codes of conduct on paper, and then you can refer back to it. David, when you just said what you said to Jonathan, do you think that was in keeping with number 3 that we all agreed to, right? So what might be in the covenant of adult relationships within the Waldorf school community? Openness. I agree that in each situation, I will go in open, even if I am upset or hurt or angry. Casey?
It makes me think of listening, but like a deeper sense of listening, not just like hearing the words, but really trying to take that into oneself. Because I feel like that's something I run into as a teacher sometimes with my colleagues is like we hear each other, but there's not like there's a next step of processing or transmuting the information.
Right. Good. And some of your colleagues here have written things like empathy and compassion, or being compassionate, I think tie into what you were just saying: truth and honesty, a work ethic, respect, speak up if something seems wrong, anti-racism, compassion, listen without judgment. We are working together in the best interest of the children, direct communication, keeping the student in the center, love, holding a reflective mindset. Treat them, the other, as you would want to be treated. As a mom, I always brought that with me to the parent meeting. Agreement to meet as human beings who listen deeply without email, and meeting with all parties, not excluding key players. Vulnerability, openness to being wrong and learning from mistakes. Trust one another to be working in the best interest of the children in front of us. Oh my gosh, this is a wise group. I have nothing left to say. You have said it all. Yeah, so I would love to just, imagine this element of covenant. We all in the Waldorf School are working in these three realms of the threefold social organism. We all have culturally derived capacities in which we are free. We have the restrictions and protections of the rules of the school. And we have this economic realm. And the world is changing fast. I was thinking about, in preparation for this weekend, how much our concepts of social justice and equity and inclusion and cultural appropriation and parents' rights have changed. I began as a classroom teacher 34 years ago now. It's an entirely different world, a world for the better in many ways, but a much more complex world than it might have been. This is perfect timing. I would like to give you a task. With all that we've said, imagining now that we have had a rupture in the fabric of our community, right? And that's how we described behavioral infractions in the high school that I last worked at, that there were ruptures in the fabric of the community that needed to be mended. Assuming that you wanted to mend that, and in some ways, if you weren't open to wanting to mend those, then maybe this wasn't this was going to be a challenging future. But if something happens in our community, so I'd like to give you a scenario, and I'd like to ask you to imagine that you are going to be in the group of teachers, administrators, and parents that needs to kind of bring healing to this scenario. Okay? So here's the scenario. The world is moving quickly, as we said, the cultural sphere in particular. And 20-something years ago, I wrote a series of plays that if I put them on now in schools, I probably would have been run out of the school, despite the fact that they seemed to be really wonderful and meet the needs of the children at the time. I wrote a play called The Man Who Counted, The Mathematical Adventures of Beremiz Samir, about 8th century Baghdad and the golden age of Arabian mathematics. And I felt like there needed to be a play about math, I don't know that I could do that as a class teacher now. I wrote a play called The Golden Age of Rama and Sita, which was a retelling of the Ramayana or the Ramayana. I don't know if I, as a white Westerner, could get away with that. I wrote a play called Las Cantigas de Santa Maria, which was a story of, well, it was a bit of a ripoff of the Canterbury Tales, of pilgrims on the path to Santiago de Compostela, and they would be working all day to get there, tired, hungry, dirty, and then at night they would tell miracle stories of the Virgin Mary to pass the time. These three plays, I wonder how they might go down now. I also put on the play Fiddler on the Roof. In a number of schools, I know that is an interesting question. Can somebody who is not Jewish play Tevye? I had a non-Jewish student play Tevye. In fact, most of my students were not Jewish playing the Citizens of Anatevka. So many books that I used and other colleagues of mine used. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, which was a 1977 Newbery Award winner by Mildred Taylor. The Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. The Education of Little Tree. Naya Nuki, the Shoshone Girl Who Ran. So many books now seem to be off limits or bring great concerns. There's real sensitivity to cultural appropriation, and probably rightfully so. Plays are hard, and plays are different than books, right? Or lessons in the classroom, because we're asking students to literally put on a costume and to take on a character. And so everything is much more sensitive. When plays have LGBTQ themes, when characters of ethnicities different from the students, when there are characters in wheelchairs or other physical differences, these can raise challenges in a school, right? So all of our ideals about compassion and empathy sometimes meet a hard place. Let's do a case study. There was a teacher in a school who wanted to do the Royal Shakespeare Company's version of the Arabian Nights. The Arabian Nights is a collection of poems, fairy tales, fables, parables, anecdotes from Eastern and Middle Eastern cultures. Its original Arabic title translated into The 1001 Nights. That's the title that's most widely known. And the stories that make up the collection are mostly from Persia, India, Syria, Iraq, Turkey. It was originally written around 850, again during the Islamic Golden Age, added to over time. And it wasn't until 1885 when the English explorer Sir Richard Burton published the complete and uncensored tales for the first time in English. Many people know stories like Aladdin and Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves and Sinbad the Sailor, right? These are things that come from this. It's a difficult story about a king who had his wife left him or had an affair. He was so hateful towards women that he was going to marry a different woman each day, sleep with her, and then have her killed the next day. So already we've got a whole misogyny thing going, violence. And of course, there's Scheherazade, who is so clever that she realizes that each night she begins to tell him a story. We talked earlier about a cliffhanger. Well, this is a cliffhanger story. She begins to tell the king a story, and she ends it on a cliffhanging note. And then they go to bed, and he says, well, I'll let you live one more day so you can keep telling the story. And the next day she does the same thing until eventually, of course, he falls in love with her. Okay, so even just telling this, right, you can see potential problems. However, the play has been done many, many times. This is a Royal Shakespeare Company version. We're in a high school, let's say a 10th grade, just for context, but it could be earlier. And the teacher feels that this is the right play for the class. Primarily Anglo students, but some from South America, no students from the Middle East. So that's important, I think. The teacher does not speak Arabic. The teacher is not Islamic. Now, parents are concerned that this play will be cultural appropriation. The teacher is convinced that the pedigree of the Royal Shakespeare Company will bring something of tremendous value to the students. She makes clear the students won't wear turbans, they won't have their faces, made brown. There won't be any overt racist takes on the play. Parent conversations start. Leaders of the school are brought in. Letters are written. Can you start to feel the heat that might be formulating? Important question you're all going to ask: what's the timing? The teacher didn't share the play until the first day of the block. It's a 4-week block. The clock is ticking. Yeah, so that's also going to be important. The clock is ticking. So parents are threatening the school. Some parents are saying, we are trying to save you from yourselves. You should listen to us. Others are saying, look, in the realm of freedom, the teacher gets to make this decision, right? So the question is, what's to be done? Feelings are hot. What I'd like to do, I'll take a moment to see if there are any questions. I'm just going to put you're not going to have enough time, but we'll just start the conversation. You're a mixed group of parents, administrators, and teachers. What's to be done? Where's the freedom of the teacher? Where's the sensitivity to the students, to the parents? What's the role of the community? Again, the clock is ticking. We can't do a year-long study of Islamic culture, for example. So question, Ruthie.
Can you repeat the nature of the play?
The play is called The Arabian Nights, sometimes known as 1001 Nights.
Right.
It's a collection of stories. So one of the scenes will be Sinbad the Sailor. One will be Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves trying to get into a cave. One will be Sinbad the Sailor. Others, but the I can't think of the technical word. The context is this woman who is trying to save her life. She's telling these stories to this murderous king. Does that make sense? Somebody asked about the children. There are many teachers who enter into conversations with the students. I have seen teachers lay out a series of plays, and students can maybe pick, but they've already been pre-chosen. As a class, I did about 25 plays with classes over the years, and over the years did things quite different depending on the age. I did at one point allow a group of students didn't seem to appreciate any of my suggestions. I told them that they had a week to research a play and convince their whole class, and they didn't take it up. It's a lot of work to read plays, and right. So yes, 10th grade. 10th grade. So any other questions that you need to be able, what is the teacher's objective motivation? The teacher's objective and motivation is that this is a great work of literature put together by the Royal Shakespeare Company, right? One of the renowned companies in drama, and that these stories are part of our cultural heritage. They have been around since the 850s. This is an opportunity to learn about a part of the world that none of these students have that much information or feeling about. So yeah, instead of doing another play set in North America or Europe, really going far afield with the intention of bringing the world into the school and onto the stage. Any other questions? So here's what I'm thinking, given the timing. I would like to give you some time to talk about this, and probably break it down in conversation for tomorrow. So I'm going to ask Deborah to put you into groups of say 4, and take about 8 minutes. You are the body that's going to make the ultimate decision on this play, to do it, to not do it, to postpone it, whatever it might be. And this will help us tomorrow when we get into talking about the complexities of adult life in the community. Deborah, sound good?
Here we go.
All right, we'll see you in 8 minutes.
Okay, I think we got everybody in there.
Oh, that's interesting. It mutes me when I come back in from the breakout group.
I think that happens automatically.
Yeah.
So, okay, we have 13 rooms. Looks like everybody's in. All right, great. This is wonderful, David. Now, I was a part of your presentation last year, and I know that some things are the same and some things are different. So you really mix it up.
I really have trouble doing the same thing, the same way. It's just not, I've never mastered that.
Yeah, me too. I can't do it. I've often, if I'm repeating teaching a class, I think, oh, it's going to be so much easier because I've done it. I could just look back on my old lesson plans, but it never works out that way.
I love, I did, I have notes and I printed out from last year and I've written all over the margins, all the ways I want to. So I think that there's not going to be time when they come back. I'm probably just going to wrap it up and ask them to be prepared to talk to it when we come back tomorrow, okay?
That's just fine. We forgot to tell them how many minutes they had. So I wonder if I should send a little message to everyone.
Yeah, because it's 1:53. They should come back at, 1:58 or 1:59.
Well, I can control that part, but they need to know how many minutes they have. So
Yeah.
I'll just write, you have until um 3 minutes before the hour or
Two is fine.
2 minutes before the hour. Because right now it is 1:54. Oh, okay.
We don't have much
All
time.
right.
It's all right. I always like to throw that in because in general, there is this idealism, we should be kind and caring and open-hearted. And then there are these issues that are so hard.
Yeah, no, this is real. This is a real one. That's a good
So
example.
hard. This was the most harsh I ever had to be with a parent. Parents were basically trying to use their parent power to shut this down. And I had to fight back and say, we're going to have to move through a process, and you don't just get to shut this down because you believe in it so strongly.
Right. Right. That's right. Yes. Yeah, and times have changed.
Yeah, times have definitely
That
changed.
never would have been an issue. I didn't have to run anything by the
I
parents
had,
or
I
like
had
that.
my play set in Baghdad. The students came on stage with prayer rugs, put them down facing
Right.
Mecca, and then went into bowing. I can't imagine I wouldn't be
No,
running out of town now.
no.
And it was so beautiful, and everyone, of course, was like so thankful to bring this into the Pine Hill Waldorf School.
Mhm.
Forget it now.
Right. So I don't need to close with
Okay.
anything, so you could just say what you need to say and close. So
Okay.
that'll work with me. That's fine. Also, I just wanted to ask you about pedagogical anthropology, so I understand what it means. But did you coin that term, or is that somewhere else?
I did not. Um, uh, I feel like this new translation of Study of Man, which talks about anthropological foundations,
Oh, okay.
and I just hear people talking. I like the term. It sounds less. Here's where I think it came from. The scholarly folks working in the universities in Germany in Waldorf education who are trying to make this palatable for non-Waldorf academics. Saying we work with this pedagogical anthropology given by Rudolf Steiner. It doesn't sound so mystical.
Yes, yes, I can see that. And it sounds like it's more like a methodology, or at least, but more living than a methodology.
You read, yeah, yeah.
It's got human in it still.
So, yeah. Ah, I was supposed to go to my granddaughter's birthday party after this. I wasn't able to go. And I asked my wife if I should come. And she wrote back and said, it's insane here. You don't need to show up. We did all kinds of
Oh,
other things. The kid birthday party. I'm like, fine. That's great. I don't need that. On her actual birthday, we took her to see a Baltimore Orioles game, and she got to run the bases when the game was over at Camden Yards Stadium.
oh, that's really nice. Well, when you come visit me in Sarasota, we have the training camp here
Oh,
for the Orioles.
I want to do that.
Yeah.
I have relatives. My in-laws are in Englewood,
Oh,
and
that's so close.
when Kelly and I've gone down there and needed to get away from her family, we've gone to Sarasota with the white squeaky sand beaches, and yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yes. Wonderful.
a beautiful area. How's the MAGA Trump quotient in your neck of the woods these days?
Well, just so you know, everything is being recorded right now.
Oh, you record this as well?
Yes, so this is also recorded, so
Excellent.
the people who are watching the video always get to see.
Excellent. Excellent.
So good to know.
That is good to know. Thank you.
Yes.
I used to stop the recording during the breakout group. Sometimes I would forget to press record again.
Exactly. That's why we do it this way. Most
And
people just fast forward during this time.
Deborah, are you staying down there? Like, is this you
It
feeling
looks
this?
like it.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we have a little homeschool school for Alma next year. I'm pretty excited about it because I like the way that they have it set up. It's really inquiry based. She's in high school,
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Presentations, art every day. I really like it. Like taking different perspectives when talking about history. Um,
I think that these, like, the Spring River School up in
Yes.
Atlantic Beach, I think these are so fascinating.
Okay, so we're 1 minute too, but I'm going to close the rooms.
Okay.
And then you'll have to just wrap up quick.
Yeah.
I think they get 60 seconds actually, in addition to this. So yes, I'll be doing work with Spring River.
You will?
Yes.
Great. Welcome back. There's more coming, yes?
Yes.
We just left early because we solved it all.
This is so good to hear. So good
like,
to hear.
I won't tell you what we decided though.
Solved all the world's problems.
Welcome back, everybody. So we don't have a whole lot of time, so we're not going to try to hear back from the groups, but I'm pleading with you to keep in your head what some of the key parts of that conversation, not necessarily what you decided or figured out how to fix the situation, but the nature of the dialogue. I tried to throw something particularly complicated your way, right? You're in the realm of art. You're in the realm of where is the parents' freedom? Where is the students' freedom? Where is the teacher's freedom? Right? What are these cultural appropriation questions? So, of course, it all went too quickly. So tomorrow when we come back together, we'll do your regular fact, feeling, essence review. We'll do all the beautiful pieces of the explorations protocol, but we will then have an opportunity to review what you came up with. Because in some ways, what happens in a conversation like that over such a difficult topic is sort of at the heart of the health or lack thereof of our adult community in the Waldorf School. Dear friends, this has been a delight. I hope that the rest of your day is rich, and I look forward to meeting with you all again, same place, same time tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank
Take
you.
care. See you all tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Deborah, I had a question, if that's okay.
Sure. Why don't you just hold on for a minute?
Deborah, see you tomorrow.
Bye, David. Thank you. I appreciate you.
And you.
Are you a part of it's like Maestros or something, like the summer training that's happening in July in Sacramento? Are you a part of that?
No, I am not.
Oh,
Are you planning on going to it?
yes, I just had it's a Waldorf training, and so should I bring like my sketchbook and stuff? Like, is that a good idea, do you think?
Of course, yes. So
Okay.
it's a Waldorf training, and what is the theme?
Middle school, so it's six. It's like I think it's like third through six or something like that.
Oh,
I'm
wonderful.
starting with six.
That's great. Well, yes, please connect with me and let me know how it goes.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's
Well,
wonderful.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. We have training. I think like this training. I think it's after I get back, like in August, and so I'll have to report back how it goes.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. I really appreciate it.
For sure. Thanks, Deborah. See you tomorrow.
All right. Take care. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Yes. Meadow.
Sorry. I've been struggling with this, what to do for the will exercise for like, I've been thinking about it ever since like